Welcome to this video. So far we have worked on the Angular project. Now let's take a look on our ASP.NET Core side. Let's open up the controller that we have here inside of the controllers folder, Weather Forecast Controller. You can see that we have here an attribute which is called route. So once we enter that name here, which is weather forecast, right, that controller suffix gets removed. So once we enter weather forecast as an URL, so http:/localhost:/port and then /weather forecast, we will get into that controller. Especially we will get into this http get because it's, well, the main GET request for that route. Once we're inside of that method, we will see some data here getting created and returned. So let's go ahead and start our application. Simply hit Ctrl F5. Alright, so you can see our Angular application. Let's go ahead into the URL bar and let's enter /weather forecast. Hit enter and you will be able to see this JSON data package right here, which is actually exactly this information that gets created here, converted into an array and returned. Now this here is type of enumerable, but all of that information will get converted into a JSON format, which is JavaScript object notation, and it's made for transferring data over the web. ASP.NET Web API sends and receives data as JSON format by default. As I earlier said, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and it's a programming language agnostic textual format for data structures, designed with both interoperability and human readability in mind. A JSON object is a collection of key value pairs. A JSON object can be empty or contain string fields, number fields, arrays, or even nested objects. So in the end, you may receive some JSON data which looks like this. We have string values, number values, nested values, and even Boolean values, for example. So if we, for example, would have a class called car and a string for the name and like an integer for the build year, it would be like name, Audi, and build year, for example, 1994. Now when we took a look at our project, especially at our weather forecast controller, I already explained it earlier in this video, but let me just get that again. The project contains a weather forecast controller by default when you create this project. The route attribute on top of the weather forecast controller means that request with this route parameter, weather forecast, you can see that right here, should be routed to the weather forecast controller. Now, notice that word controller right here. The controller suffix is not part of the URL. So now let's continue and change that weather forecast controller here into our flight controller.